Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Steven Shalowitz, first reminding you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. After all these years, hope you got it. It's jnf.org. All right, as for this episode, we wanted to talk about the startup and innovation space in Israel as a result of the savage October 7th attack and the war against the Hamas terrorists. And for that, we are joined in conversation with Molly Livingstone. Now, a word or two about Molly. She was born and raised in the City of Angels, that would, of course, be Los Angeles, California, before attending college in Boston and moving to Israel for what she thought would be a semester abroad and an internship. But of course, we all know how that turns out because people stay, as Molly did. She now raises 4 children in Jerusalem and still finds time to work in Israel's innovation sector, connecting Israeli entrepreneurs with the global community, creating relationships, deal flow, and change. And with all that, Molly joins us now via Zoom from her Jerusalem home. Welcome to the program, Molly.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you aboard, and I'd like to have you share some startups that I know that you're particularly excited about, and you shared them with me in full disclosure mode before this conversation. I'm also very excited about them as well, and can't wait to talk about them. But before we get to them, can you just really give us the lay of the land in terms of the innovation sector post October 7th, Molly?
Sure. So most people will know when they're listening that we are the startup nation, and we have that name because we have more startups per capita and everyone has a great idea here. It is really Israel's resource. That's how I like to think of it, because we don't have oil, we don't have many things that other people would consider as, commodity. We have our people. And that has become our resource. And you see that through the education, and you see that through the success of the unicorns and all the startups. October 7th was kind of the final straw as things were collapsing. So we had post pandemic, right? We had Corona, and then we had this bit of a high and valuations through the roofs all over the world, and startups were doing really well. And that came tumbling down, inflation and recession. Then, because of judicial reform that was going on here, you probably saw a lot of protests coming out of Israel and the change that the government was trying to make. That also began to hurt Israel's economy, and specifically in the startup sector. Investors were worried about what was going on, and seeing how that was playing out. And then October 7th took everyone by surprise, of course, emotionally stunted us. I live in October 7th every day. I've never moved past that, and many Israelis feel that way.
And by the
And
way,
as
we should share that your husband is in reservists up north right now, and you're home with
correct.
the 4 kids.
Yes, I don't know who has it harder. He was called up on October 7th. He proudly put on his uniform. I have to say this just to give you an example of the people, the integrity. He wore his uniform for hours on that Shabbat, walking around, marching up and down the street, so proud and ready to go. He was there for 2 months. He came back home for 2 months, and now he'll probably be there again for another 2 months, but it's very unclear. They don't give you information. And so, yeah, so that actually plays into a lot of what happened with October 7th, because we're real people on the ground here. And so there are companies that suffered because people were murdered. People were murdered at the festival. People were murdered in their homes. It was a holiday weekend, so they were visiting their friends and family at those different kibbutzim. And then you have, from the top down, leaders, CEOs, and staff that got called up. So it's very hard to have a funding round and trying to pitch while you're in a uniform, while you're in Gaza, while you don't have phone service. So many have tried and many have succeeded, but understand the difficulties of what that looks like. And then you have your staff that's not there because they've been called up. And funding, you have investors who are ghosting you. They don't like what they're seeing. So we're seeing this play out on a very large scale, and we're probably only at the beginning of this hot mess, meaning there's been a steady survival mode, which Israel's always very good at. And so a lot of companies have said, okay, let's be super resourceful. Hey, you over there, you're going to now do 3 different jobs. And we're going to, pause on this, or you know what, we're just going to flip the whole thing, do it a different way. Let's have a pivot. And it's working. But to what extent? People are exhausted, and you need motivation. And so that's what I've really been seeing on a personal level here as I work with these founders and entrepreneurs. I literally say I'm trying to help them put on their pants, let alone be able to pitch. And so that is a glimpse into the ecosystem. It seems dark, but honestly, they are the light. I love innovation. Innovation is always forward thinking. So as dark as it is right now, they're my light to the future, because that's what you focus on is, okay, so what's next?
Right. So it sounds to me, Molly, like people are stepping up in this, to use your term, this hot mess, right?
Mhm.
Those that weren't called up, for example, or those that were called up and now they know that they're back. Everyone is doing multiple jobs within each one of their own startups.
Yeah. What's really interesting, so this is something that probably most listeners would know, but as reservists, obviously you're going to get paid by the government right now when you're going up and you're not going to work for 2 months. And so what the government realized was a lot of the high tech guys and girls, and whatever else we want to call them, they were actually very expensive for the government because they have much higher salaries. And so a lot of them have not done as much time in reserves due to that. My husband's an archaeologist, so he said he'd be there forever. But yeah, so that just gives you an example of the situation and how real it is on the ground. I mean, you're paying for these people to be in active duty, and as well as companies losing money. This is our greatest challenge right now. And you have players like the Israel Innovation Authority. So they're funded by the government. And so what they've done, along with many venture capitalists, VCs, is created funds to support these companies. There's a lot of companies that were, as I said, going into funding rounds and may have had a runway of only 6 months before they were going to need more money. And if they're called up into action, they no longer have that time. So this has been going on, and there's more and more tracks of ways to get money and philanthropy and angel investors and VCs that, yes, are standing up and supporting the community,
Yeah,
which is great.
I was going to ask you, can you talk then about the support that they're getting from investors both in Israel and outside of the country? Are they supportive? Are they understanding of the situation? Are they knowing that this is sort of a blip in the system in terms of what's going on in the timeline?
Right. So it depends on the investor. You can't speak for everybody, but I think that we have seen a tremendous amount of support. October 7th, as I said, was going to be part of the last long holiday season that we have, here, the high holidays. It was Simchat Torah. And the next day was supposed to be Sunday, unfortunately, is our Monday. It's really upsetting for me. I've never gotten used to it. But Sunday, I was all set to go back to work and get into high gear. And there were conferences and there were investor meetups and there was all these things, and everything was canceled. And canceled with who knows when we'll see them again. And there's no flights. Only El Al was flying. And those flights became very expensive. So you can't even go somewhere and no one's coming to you. So now we're seeing more and more solidarity missions. I have seen quite a lot of JNF friends. I have one on the way who's bringing my son a Nintendo Switch. Shh, don't tell customs. But, that's been amazing. And so people like that who have the conviction to say, I'm coming, I'm helping, I matter, they matter. Yes, we're seeing that on all fronts, whether it's, helping out on the farms to the actual angel investors or investors that have committed and said they're going to keep funding. That said, there's been a lot of investors who are ghosting, or they don't like what they see when they do the due diligence right now because of the shift in the market. Moody, making our credit look really bad. Just the constant upheaval where you don't know what's next. Even the protests that are going on right now for the hostages, obviously at a certain point also become very political and back to those same feelings of that judicial reform of we need a new government. And that feeling, it seeps into everything that you get to see, and it plays out in an economical way. So that's really what's happening right now.
Just to pivot for a moment, Molly, can you talk and address the relationship between Jews and Arabs in the startup ecosystem? Can you talk about that pre and post October 7th?
Yeah, this is a thing where I live in Jerusalem and there are 5 Arab neighborhoods around me. And there isn't a fence, there isn't a border. They are Jerusalem residents. If they want to be, they are Israeli residents. Some still hold Jordanian citizenship. We live together, we work together, and we innovate together. And so that's what you see on a daily basis. I was working at Mass Challenge, which is an accelerator that came out of Boston and has a hub here in Israel. We were the second hub, and they have a hub also in Switzerland and back in Texas. And one of the things that I was focusing on as the ecosystem manager was our relationships. And so the week before October 7th, I was actually in East Jerusalem at a graduation for an Arab accelerator here. I was the only Jew in the room, and it was unreal. It was incredible. I'm looking at my fridge with my magnets, taking pictures that day, watching not just Arab, but women within that world shining and standing as these bright lights. And together we were going to make so much magic. We were going to create so much innovation. And we were talking about our meeting. And it was actually funny that, they were saying to me, but don't forget, you guys still have your high holidays. We'll be meeting after that. I mean, the awareness and the friendliness and the way that the innovation brings you so much higher than anything political. And it's really where you can feel the culture come together of this is what matters. The change is what matters. And forget the rest. Leave it outside the door. And we continued on. Mass Challenge actually had an accelerator program that was geared towards the Arab community, with doing it in partnership with another organization called Hasub. Hasub means computer in Arabic. And so they were up north, and we had an accelerator that was for very like pre-ideation. People who, let's say there was a guy there who was a vet. And so he saw, a problem with the way that the Arab community treats animals. And so his startup was going to focus on more education. So people that didn't have had the idea, but nothing else. And they didn't even know, am I an entrepreneur? I have no idea. So we were facilitating that with the support of the Israel Innovation Authority, a 5-year grant. And it was very challenging post October 7th to keep having these meetings. One, physically challenging. There were certain people in the program that couldn't get out of where they were living because of certain lockdowns that were coming up, and we couldn't go to them, and everyone went online. And there was a feeling of, oh no, are we going to talk about this? Are we going to ignore this? And a lot of the participants, and they were all Arab, didn't want to continue. And we asked that let's leave again the politics at the door and just focus on innovation. And actually they did it. And it was the best thing that any of us could do, because it meant, just like I said before, that we're focusing on the future. We're not talking about the ugliness around us. We're focusing on the beauty ahead of us.
I want to pick up on what you just said. You said they didn't want to continue. What do you mean by that?
They didn't want to continue in the accelerator. They wanted to stop. They wanted to stop the program.
And then, so what made them not stop?
That we said, what we're doing in this program is bigger than even what's going on right now. And this is actually a very Israeli thing, that it doesn't matter how hard it gets, you keep going. And actually, the harder it gets, you welcome this challenge. And through that welcoming, you will find the best gems that you never even dreamed of. That's what the Iron Dome is. Our Iron Dome comes out of our safety being at challenge, okay? That we're scared that a rocket is going to hit us, led to the innovation of stopping it in the air. That is phenomenal. So we see these problems as only being challenges. And that's kind of what we wanted to give over in the accelerator, that don't let them take you down.
So you shared that sentiment with them, and was it sort of like a light bulb moment for them at the moment? Did they have to go back and think about it? Can you talk a little bit about that process, do you think, for them?
There was definitely no light bulb at that time. It was like a real convincing, "Hey, can you just come online? Let's all just go into this next meeting online, leave all the politics out. No one wants to know anybody's opinions." And they, through that process of talking about their pitch and focusing on their innovation and whatever they're dealing with, they realize you can achieve this still. We aren't going to be held back. In this space, it truly is that safe space.
And so that's moving forward now.
So that finished, yes, that particular track of the accelerator, they graduated, they finished. Now, I didn't get to join them because, as one of the hardships that also affected me, was a cut in government funding to focus the funding on war efforts, which meant that certain things like in the innovation sector, in the arts sector, and education center, we've seen drastic cuts. And so I, unfortunately, lost my job. But I didn't give up. I still work with those founders because you cannot abandon them. And also, to be honest, I need their light as much as they say they need me to support them. I need them. I need to know I can also put on my pants. I also need to help somebody. And so
Okay.
that's been really great.
And we know you're going to end up on your feet. So no worries indeed
I
there.
thought you were saying, I know you're wearing pants right now because you are. Yeah.
Well, I can only see you from, sort of the waist
Exactly.
up anyway. So there you go. But I do know that you have some chicken soup on the stove right now because you shared that with me. And then
My
you're going to be
matzo,
yes, and you're going to be putting is it the matzo balls that you have on the stove right now?
it's my matzo balls. My matzo balls.
Okay,
Yeah. For Shabbat.
because we are recording this on a Thursday evening for you, so you're getting ready for Shabbat. So definitely multitasking. What sort of before we get on to some of the startups that you're excited about, and I am crazy about some of them, by the way, I can't wait to talk
Ooh.
about them. Can you just give us a scenario of where do you think all of this is going? Let's say if you and I were to sit down, let's say 6 to 8 months from now, what are you seeing? What are you thinking?
Okay, so I'm starting to see already the conferences that I talked about that there was no renewed date. They started to put dates on things. So I think that's very good. That means that come March, with springtime, a perfect time, I'm starting to see more opportunity. With more opportunity, you'll find more motivation. A lot of the soldiers who have been up for a couple of months up north or down south in Gaza, as of this recording, there was a green light to have communities going back 4 kilometers, which is like 2 miles away from the Gaza border. They could actually return. So we're starting to see a positive shift in going back to what will still be a new normal, but kind of what we're used to. If I had to guess, I think 2024 is still going to be a very difficult year in terms of funding. And we're going to see less startups starting up, which was already a decline that we were seeing where startups are scaling, but there wasn't as many startups as has been in previous years. That said, I think there's going to be a lot of innovation, and maybe more in the defense, AI, robotics, machine learning. That's going to come out of what we saw from the war. And the next generation, like kids my son's age who are 13, who are very focused and ask a lot of questions. Why doesn't the Iron Dome do it like this? Why do they wait for this? I mean, they notice these things. We haven't even touched kids yet, but like that's a whole nother podcast. But I guess as an entrepreneur, you have to be crazy and you have to be an optimist, right? Otherwise, why would you do it?
Right.
Um,
So that's what I was going to ask you about innovation and
yeah,
startups coming out of this war. And you just
yeah.
ticked off a couple. And when I was in Israel, I did do some agricultural work there, which I really enjoyed. I'm sorry it was under those circumstances.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, do you think agriculture is going to change? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but anything to sort of help to mechanize it because you had so many of the foreign laborers that went home. And I'm wondering if there are certainly, I think there are opportunities there.
Definitely. I think you raise a really interesting point and are kind of thinking in that Israeli mentality of lack of is a challenge. So, first of all, Israel has always dealt with food security and those challenges. So, people may like to know the cherry tomato. This is one of my fun facts. I worked at the Hebrew University, which is the number one university in the country, their tech transfer. A tech transfer is commercializing research. So some people could relate to that as Mobileye, which is in almost every car nowadays. That was research at Hebrew University by Professor Amnon Shashua, and it was commercialized. And now it was the biggest company to date. They had the largest exit bought by Intel at $15.3 billion. And they're located still here in Jerusalem, and they have autonomous cars. They're about to have the autonomous taxis out on the roads. So that's the tech transfer. Now, going back to the cherry tomato, that came out of Hebrew University. That was a breed of tomato that was not ever commercialized. You could grow it in your backyard, but you couldn't grow 10,000. So they commercialized that at Hebrew University, which has the only faculty of agriculture in the country. I have seen the most wild and exciting ventures in agriculture before October 7th. So yes, you're absolutely right in terms of thinking with the mindset of for food security and agriculture and climate, they are going to come up with innovations. And going back to AI and robotics, how is that going to look playing into both of those worlds that can collaborate and make those kinds of changes where you may not need as many laborers or you can do it in a different way? Absolutely. I will say some of the things that I've been very excited about are things like teff. Teff is from Ethiopia. It's a tiny grain and it's a superfood. And
It's what
so
you make
having
injera out of.
very good. Yes, the delicious bread. So obviously in Israel, we have a large population of Ethiopian Israelis. And so they were constantly getting teff from Ethiopia. Ethiopia saw what happened with quinoa from South America. It became so popular that inside the countries, it became very expensive. So they actually shut down sending teff to Israel. Israel understood the Ethiopian community needed teff. So they made a special deal to get teff back to Israel. But the Ethiopians were saying, this is really gross teff. They're giving us like the bottom of the barrel. It's covered in sand. It's gross. So a researcher who was at the university and heard one of his postdoctorate students, who's an Ethiopian farmer, talking about this, said, what if we could make teff here? And it's like, no, that's impossible. Like it just grows on trees everywhere and bushes in Ethiopia, but here? And they're like, challenge accepted. And so now they are making all these different breeds of teff that we would be able to use. And that is very important in food security because there's not a lot of grains in the world, flour, barley. And because of, for example, the war in Ukraine, we saw prices rise on those things, right? So it's very important that you would be able to grow under any circumstances. And so this is just one example of how, yes, going forward, there's going to be a real shift in how agriculture looks. It could be growing vertically in an apartment building, on a roof, indoors. And we're going to touch upon that in some of the startups that you said you're very excited about as well.
Yes. Okay. So let's dive into some of them right now. Let's talk about those startups. And again, full disclosure mode, you sent me the list
Yeah.
beforehand, and I have their tabs open on my browser right now. So for those of you that are watching this via YouTube, you're going to see me toggling all over the place here. And I'd love our listeners also to open them up as well and follow along if they can. And the first one is Kinoko, and
Yep.
the URL is kinoko-tech.com. So it's KINOKO tech.com. And this is the mushroom one. And there are 10,000 reasons why I'm really interested in this one. We don't have enough time to go into those 10,000 reasons. So you share why you're interested in this and why it made your list of startups to share with us.
Okay, these are my mushroom ladies. So I met them at the Hebrew University.
Mhm.
They're three women founders. They'll agree with me that we hate that we have to qualify them as three women founders. One day we won't, but it does play out when they're the only women founders often in a room and three women founders. That's really strange
And let
in the
me add
start.
that they're really highly credentialed as well.
Absolutely. So they met
Yes.
each other at Hebrew University through Huji Innovate, which is the campus's innovation center, spurring innovation from a very early stage so that students can think entrepreneurially. So these students got together, they were put these in a random group. These three women come together in a random group, and one of them says, she's a PhD student, Daria, and she said, "Hey, I have this idea for taking the root of mushrooms, and instead of having, what we have, tofu, which comes from soy, which actually is not very healthy, but it's kind of the only option that exists out there for vegans, vegetarians, and whatever. We could take the root and we could turn that, which is much healthier, into the next superfood that would be for a vegetarian, vegan market and for anyone that loves plant-based proteins." And that was it. And these women got together, they came up with the idea. Kinoko is a Japanese mushroom, that's the name.
Mhm.
And they won that competition at the end of the program, and they formed a company with the winnings. And since then, they have taken off. I mean, they are unreal. They were affected too by October 7th. They have a factory that they worked so hard to get this factory in Ashdod. So that's down in the south. It wasn't affected, but there still, was rocket fire and it still wasn't safe. And so they have been hurt in their funding round because of that. But they are in almost probably they're in the finish line of FDA approval, and Ministry of Health in Israel took longer than the FDA, if you can believe it. And the basic idea is that, like I said, they can make with this plant-based protein that comes out of the mushroom anything. So I ate falafel. My son ate sausages, kid approved. Okay. They can make it into like a granola bar type of thing. So there's many ways to do it. So as a parent, I love the idea of a healthy snack. It's easy to make. They want to like have it as you would be in your grocery store and see kinoko frozen meals that you can just pop into the microwave or whatever. This is their vision. They're also mothers. They're so forward thinking, and it is so exciting to see them succeed time and time again.
Yeah, and on their website, it's human friendly, it's plant friendly, it's foodies friendly. I actually hate that word foodies, by the way, for a variety of reasons. I think it's very elitist, but in any event, but we'll give it to them. And then it's also climate friendly. I do have to take exception, though, what you just said about soy, because listen, the Chinese have been eating soy and the Japanese have been eating soy for millennia, and it hasn't hurt them. It's only when it's processed in a certain
Exactly.
negative way. And also, don't forget that there's seitan, there's tempeh, there are legumes that are also plant sources. As someone that is plant forward, meaning yours truly, I absolutely adore this kinoko. I have to meet these ladies the next time I'm in Israel. Let me
Next
just
week.
ask you, so where is all of this right now in terms of can you buy it? And is it available? Is it B2C?
So I think they'll be B2B. Okay. I think they'll be selling it into supermarket chains or producers, and then they'll put a label on it with them. Um, it is not for sale as of yet. As I said, they're going through just regulations because
Okay.
mushroom in this form has never been done before. It's all natural, and it's also, as many of the friendly things, it's gluten free and it's a superfood, which is very,
Great.
very important. And what did I want to say about they're scaling up? You asked about where it's at. So right
Mhm.
now, as part of the process, they're also scaling up production so that it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So that's very important. And hopefully, yes, you will be seeing this. They're going to start with a soft launch. The last time I spoke with the CEO, Jasmine Ravid, so her goal was to have a soft launch where it'll be sold in restaurants and cafes and pop-ups here in Israel, maybe to catering, and then they'll go to a wider scale. But I've eaten it many times, okay, because I try to get in there. I won't call myself a foodie now that I know, that you're against it, but Mama loves a good meal, so I will be there whenever they need. They had for the Queen's birthday a couple years ago, they were invited to the embassy here in Tel Aviv, and they presented the delicious food there. And they've done it at many conferences. And if JNF wants them, to cater the next conference, I'm pretty sure they could do it. But it is very exciting, and it's just something that is very important. As you were saying, plant-based proteins are, essential to us. I didn't put cultivated meat here, and it's been getting an interesting rep right now. There was a big article on it this week, if it's good or bad. But these markets are going to totally shift how we see our animals and how we eat our animals and how we can have food as medicine.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I love it. So once again, that's kinoko-tech.com. Actually, what we'll do is we'll put all of these companies that we talk about on the show notes page of this episode on our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. So IsraelCast, rather, it's called. Yeah.
I
So
would
in any,
love Can I just say, I think it's really important, because why I also asked to talk about this on the
mhm,
podcast is there's a lot of these companies that are very early stage, and it's
mhm,
hard to get investors. And so anyone that's listening, if you know someone that you think could be interested, I really like, you gave it in my bio. Like, I try to be a connector. I
right.
just want to facilitate it so much. I want to help these companies. And I chose these companies because I think these companies are the early stage. They're often get a little bit ignored because they're not the typical high tech, but that's all the more reason that we need
Yeah.
them to succeed, and the support of the community to help them do that.
Absolutely. And it's not only helping these individuals and helping everyone globally that's going to be able to use or enjoy them, but it's also helping Israel as well at the same time. So
Definitely.
let's underscore that. The next one, I actually love this because I have plenty of clothes that are so torn and ripped, etc., that I need to do something with. And we have a big bin downstairs in my building. This one is called Textre,
Mhm.
Textre, and you shared the LinkedIn site for this. So there's a LinkedIn page, right? So folks can just sort of go on to LinkedIn, Textre. And this I love. Share it.
Okay, so as you said, they only have a LinkedIn page. I mean, they're really early. They don't
Yeah.
have a website yet. The concept is that there are landfills full of fabrics that
Yeah.
get thrown out and are just waste, whether it's the ripped up clothes that you don't know what to do with anymore, or it's things that were on a sales rack and still nobody bought them. And this is
Yeah.
happening time and time again. And the reason that the clothes don't get recycled is it's just too expensive. You're not only taking off buttons, which go in that pile, and zippers, which go in this pile, but in the fabric, what is woven into it. Here's cotton, here's polyester, here's some other stuff. And it's just too costly in order to do these kinds of things. So just go ahead and dump it in a landfill, which is super bad for the entire world and has all kinds of carbon emissions and chemicals that are coming off of it. Lee Cohen is born and raised in Israel. She works with her parents in factories. She becomes a lawyer, and suddenly it kind of dawns on her, it's not so great what we're doing. I'm not sure that being a lawyer is really what I should do. And this
Mhm.
is what defines an entrepreneur, that you learn in Mass Challenge and the Accelerator. And she was in the Accelerator with Tech3, and they were one of the winners of the 2023 cohort. And it's when you become obsessed with the problem. That's when you're an entrepreneur, because for some reason you've decided this is a problem that you're going to fix. Even though
Mhm.
you might not have the right tools, this becomes your obsession and this is what you're going to fix. And now you're an entrepreneur. So many of you out there might be like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. And it's true. You might very well be. And these are the risk takers. So she decides to abandon law school, or actually, she was already a lawyer, and focus on finding something to solve this problem. And she did. They found a compound that basically can break up those mixtures of what I talked about from the cotton and the polyester very easily. And they've created right now a proof of concept where it essentially makes a new fabric. So you're taking the old fabrics, you're breaking them down, and you're making them into new fabrics or even plastics. And they made their first proof of concept, a POC, which is a hanger. And so now she's at this point, and this is the scary point, where she's run out of money. She was bootstrapped, which means that she's kind of funding this on her own, friends and family, whatever it is. And she had an investor locked up after a year of working together here in Israel, their company, Kafrit. They were ready to sign on the dotted line. And on October 7th, the business development person was murdered along with his daughter. And you can imagine that how Lee feels. She had just wrapped up figuring out the contract and was about to hit send for Sunday morning. Like I told you, everybody going back to work finally, October 8th. and the deal is done and I'm moving forward into the next phase. And instead, you're an entrepreneur that knows people that have been killed, knows your life has forever been changed, and also your business partner is murdered. So how do you get up the next morning and how do you get motivated to have the next 10 calls? And you just lost your funding and now your runway is much shorter in time. These are very scary, real things. So I have been speaking with Lee once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it takes, and helping her with a lot of the materials. She was recently in America on the road show that she won for 2023 with Mass Challenge. And she's at a very critical point where they really need like even $100,000 to keep going, or this compound dies with this company, which I sound so dramatic, but this is reality. Here in Israel, Fox, not the TV show guys, but Fox, we have Fox stores, clothing stores and furniture stores. They're very interested in the hangar. That's a great partnership. She's also looking at H&M if anyone has any connections. She's really trying to get into that market. IKEA would be great. But this could really change the future of fabrics and helping us out with creating that new plastic instead of, constantly just chucking our plastic out there. So it is quite revolutionary.
Yeah, and the fashion industry is such a violator when it comes to environmental degradation. So this is taking old fabric from clothes and repurposing them. I absolutely just love this. I wish her every success. Please keep us posted on
Yeah.
on her trajectory. Well, we do want to move on, and the next one is called Everblue Labs. Once again, Everblue Labs, and folks can go on to everblue-labs.com. For me, this particularly resonated because I just got finished watching You Are What You Eat on Netflix. And it's
Yes.
one of the Netflix shows that included factory farming fish and how just the deplorable conditions that fish live in and how the fish become diseased and what a real balagan it is in these fish farms. And so this is a solution for that. And I'd love you to share what that's all about.
Yeah, this is exactly what you're saying. Like, a lot of us just don't realize what's going on. And then once we see it, you can never unsee it.
I
And
know.
so,
Every
right?
time, listen, every time that I see like fish, being served anywhere, I just want to, shake people and say, do you actually know where your fish came from and what they were eating
Yeah.
before
So
it
they'll
made it to your plate? Yeah.
when they don't like it or they think there's a weird taste, they'll blame the chef. It ain't the chef, it's
Yeah.
us. Because what's going on right now, especially first in the ocean, they're fish farming, they're taking all the fish out of the ocean. Like you said, first of all, with climate change, the temperatures are rising in the water. So they're getting sick. There's famine, there's not enough of them. And it's a whole sort of eco chain breakdown. If you don't have the fish, it goes on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. They're doing fish farming, which, as you said, is in deplorable conditions. And so this solution is unreal what
Yeah.
he's created here, which is that it's a container and you can recycle the water and it works on making the fish a lot healthier. So when they're eating better, then they feel better. My potatoes just went off.
Yes, we heard
Uh,
that. Listen, I
and
gotta make it there for Shabbat dinner because it sounds like you're gonna have a real feast.
as long as I don't burn it, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they're good. Thank God
Okay.
for technology that there's the timer on that.
Yes.
And so speaking of eating, so when the fish eat better and they feel better, they taste better.
Yeah.
And so these conditions will change the quality of fish and it will change the quality of fish farming. But added to all of this, you don't need to be near a water source. The way that the container will work is you don't have to be near a water source. You can get the initial water, but then you're recycling the water. And
Yeah.
that's why you don't need to be near a source, and you don't have to worry about dumping it. So the way that the CEO originated getting just a container somewhere was actually with the Jerusalem Aquarium. We have a beautiful aquarium that was built here a few years ago, but we're not near a water source. And so they were having a lot of problems with just dirty water and what to do with it. And so he didn't see this, he didn't realize that, oh, wait, this could be a solution for you. Let me just pivot for a second. And he made a beautiful partnership over there, and it worked. And so that was the way that he started out. They're very early stage. What's going to be really tricky for him is farmers are super conservative. They don't want any new technology. They don't like any kind of change. What he's hoping will happen is they will not only understand, yes, there's a really nice climate benefit, but your fish will be produced faster, better, and eventually cheaper. And so that's profit. And if the farmers can see that and see that that's going to come in, 3 to 5 years once they really start initiating this, then that's where you're going to see a really exciting shift. And I'm just fingers crossed for Ever Blue Labs.
And healthier as well. The fish won't
The
be
fish will be
diseased.
healthier. Yeah, it's crazy what they do to them because he was the one that taught me this, Sneer,
Mhm.
the CEO. He was also in the lab, and he was working on off taste. That was his focus under his researcher, and together they were able to commercialize this and spin it out from the university, also Hebrew University. I have to be honest, most of my stuff comes out of Hebrew U
Mhm.
or Jerusalem-based companies because this is where I live. But what was so scary when he told me this is that right now what they do for off taste is they kind of waterboard the fish. They take them out and they slowly kill the fish and they keep putting water on them to literally try to get like the bad smell off of them and therefore the bad taste out of them. I mean, that's wild. That's what you're putting in your mouth. So,
Right.
I mean,
Right. And one more point is that this really is a game changer for places that don't have a regular supply of water, for certain places in sub-Saharan Africa, for example,
yes,
parts of Asia as well. And so there you go. We should actually connect him with ACAT, the Arva International Center for Agricultural Training, which JNF very proudly supports. And we had Khani, of course, the executive director on our program here, and she's one of my all-time favorite people. So perhaps we should connect them and we can do a little shidduch there. All right,
I
listen,
love that.
let's move on. Daika
Mhm.
Wood, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
It's
Daika Wood.
Daika.
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 Okay, there you go. Daika Wood. And it's DAIKAWOOD.com. Folks, check it out right now as we begin the conversation about this. This is recycled wood. And again, love this. Love anything about the environment. And we're doing kind of a focus more here in our conversation about food and things that are impacting startups that are impacting the environment, certainly. But certainly there's a huge other universe out there of high tech and technology. But of course, in the interest of time. So share with us what you love about that, because I really love it myself.
Yeah. So I was just at their factory yesterday, so I can
Hmm.
really talk about what I saw. Daika wood. Daika is a type of tree, and the idea here is just like we talked about with tax-free and, materials just being thrown into landfills.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's the same process for wood. So burnt wood, municipal wood, wood from factories, building, whatever. What are you going to do with it? You got to
Yeah.
dump it. So we see that government regulations are coming in and saying, no, you can't just dump that waste stream anymore. You're going to have to find a solution. And so that's exactly where Daika Wood saw here a solution that is, again, another game changer, which is what if we take this recycled wood and we take the wood, we recycle it, and we make new wood. So it's the components of wood, but it's recycled. So actually, if you can bear with me on this, it feels like wood, it looks like wood, but it doesn't burn like wood. So it's kind of crazy. It will bring down the price point of wood and also try to push away from the fake wood looking stuff that you definitely see at IKEA, where it's kind of really just plastic, very bad for you, very bad for the environment. And here is an all natural way of making this wood. It's circular economy, which means that you're just going right back into the circle of life, right? You're just bringing the wood back to life. So this is phenomenal. What I saw yesterday in the factory was actual wood, chopped up wood that they either get for free or the company pays to bring it to them. And they're making everything. I mean, if you can imagine your island, in the kitchen
Mhm.
to the walls of, every shared space, office place, whatever, to make it look really cool. They can do 3D because unlike normal wood where you'd have to like carve out certain things, they're actually using molds and doing it a little bit differently. So they can do things quicker.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's less manpower. When we were talking about kind of AI, it's not really AI, but it is cutting down on the manpower, and 3D, whatever you want, all different colors, so cool.
And
I'm just obsessed.
I'm looking on their website right now, Molly, and I'm seeing they have these really quite arresting looking lampshades. Holy
Yeah,
smokes, they're beautiful. So where are they right
it's on.
now? When can I buy one?
So I know. Well, if you wanna get I've made them. I really tried to help them out as much as possible just because I was obsessed. I tried to get them to make my island when I moved into my place and did
Mhm.
renovations. I was like, "Can I have a Dyke island?" They're like, "Not yet." So where they are at is, yes, they are looking to now actually go into the commercial marketplace because they've scaled up where they can provide that. They're looking very much into places like IKEA in order to be able to do that, and there'll be all kinds of crazy things. But they were doing things, for example, picture frames, cell phone stuff, magnets. You can put the magnet right into it. So that was where they were starting small. They could be B2C in that sense, or they could be B2B where they distributed out to these different producers like IKEA. So eventually you will probably be able to buy Dyke wood in places like IKEA, certain furniture stores. I don't know if Target, it might be a little more high end or more premium, but eventually that is the goal, is to get there and have this recycled wood that would ultimately replace plastics and help out by bringing in wood that's recycled, that instead of being used as just being dumped into a landfill
It,
somewhere.
and one more point, it's so beautiful and it looks sort of marbleized, at least the examples that I'm seeing here. This is really, really beautiful. So congrats, really, to the team. Listen, I think we probably have enough time just for one more, and you've really spoiled me with choice in terms of sending me so many different startups. We're going to have you back for a round two and a round three and four and so
I'm
on.
fine with that.
Um, let's see. I'll tell you what, just in keeping with our food theme, okay?
Yeah.
Because let's save some of the other ones for another time because you have an AI for hearing impaired, which was, well, you know what? Since I invoked it, I'll tell you what. Let's do Coda. Let's do Coda,
Yeah.
which is the hearing impaired. They don't have a website yet. Let's do that, and then
Nope.
let's end on the Wonder Veggies. So, Coda, what can you
Okay.
briefly tell us about that?
So Coda's super cool. CEO Shani Bibi, she was raised with deaf parents, and basically she realized she was an interpreter for them wherever they went. Okay, she had to do sign language, and she'd have to talk to the salesperson, or she'd have to explain something in a movie, because even though you have closed caption, you're not really reading with emotion. I mean, you're like,
Right.
wait, who said what? I didn't get that. It's really not a fair playing field, and inclusive to the hearing impaired community. So this is where she saw, I don't want to be the interpreter. I want there to be an AI version of instant interpretation, instant sign language that could be incorporated in all live or recorded TV, movies, learning online, whatever it is. And that's what she's created. So it would be AI for the hearing impaired. It would be sign language. And by the way, there's a tons of different sign language in. It's not just, there's American Sign Language. There's actually Hebrew Sign Language. There is American. It's not just me being an American saying American instead of English. There's American Sign Language. There's different versions of English Sign Language. There's all different sign language. And her AI is an avatar that would appear in the corner of the screen and would instantly translate using AI any of the verbal, whatever you're seeing on the screen, in any language of sign language. It's just so cool.
That just blows
And
my
just,
mind.
yeah. America actually has a lot of laws, and many people are breaking these laws by not already having a more inclusive way of providing to the hearing impaired. And so there have been a lot of legal battles. And so what she's hoping on is that instead of having a legal battle, because they're going to come for you, just invest or partner with me and you will have this AI avatar. And she wants to design all different types. One of her biggest goals is they have at the Super Bowl in the halftime show, they'll have sign language. They'll have a person that is doing sign language.
Mhm.
So she just so badly wants to see her avatar at the Super Bowl doing all different sign language for the international audience that would watch it.
You know, Molly, and before we get to the final one, the Wonder Veggies, um, I see all the protests out on the street against Israel. And I
Mm.
think to myself, you want Israel to go away? Useful idiots. This is what Israel is bringing to the world, all of this and more. So, don't get me started on that because that's not what our conversation's about. But I think we just need to pause for a moment and think that all of this is coming out of this tiny country called Israel that the rest of the world is attacking right now. So just want to say that as we wind down with our final startup here called Wonder Veggies, again, is a plant-forward person. Love the idea of this. So tell us what it's all about. And folks can go on to wonderveggies.co, WONDERVEGGIES.co, and check out what they're all about.
Yes. So I've been working very closely with them. The CEO, Danny Weiss, is an amazing CEO. And this is what's so cool. Probiotics, which is for your gut, right? We all want to go with our gut and have a healthy gut. It really changes the way we think and feel.
When I'm gonna interrupt you there just by saying that so much of our health begins in the gut, right? Our brain
Yes,
health and everything else health in our bodies begins with the gut, and people don't understand that enough. So go ahead.
right. We have our intuition and we say we feel it. It literally is your gut. Your gut has the same mechanisms
Yeah,
as your brain.
yeah.
So if that's clouded, if that's not healthy, of course the rest of you is going to feel that way. And the only way you can really get probiotics right now is dairy, right? Your yogurts or fermented. So kimchi, or go
Kimchi.
ahead and drink a jar of pickles, or supplements. And in supplements, you're not even getting the real amount that you need. So here comes Wonder Veggies, and they say, hey, could we infuse this somewhere else, like where you're already getting your vitamins, which is, could you put this in your vegetables? And what they realized is, yes, you can. Non-GMO, all natural, really unbelievable that they started now with sprouts and leafy greens. The goal starting out in prepackaged salads that you would see on your shelf, okay? And you will literally be eating the most healthy way possible. And when you talk about food as medicine, this is really where even the White House just came out with their new legislation, which is focused on food as medicine. And it's all about accessibility. People need to be educated, but they also need to have these food sources and nutrients available. This makes it available because if you're a vegan, you can't get your probiotics. You can't go and just have yogurt. If you're a celiac, no, is celiac the right one? What's the one where you can't have dairy? There's some Jewish
Real-
disease where they can't have
Well,
dairy.
you're lactose intolerant.
There you go, the lactose. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and many
so
Asians are. Well, many Asians are as well.
yeah. So this is a great way to do it. And what's so exciting also, because I've been working very closely with them, it's not only going to be in leafy greens, they're seeing actually in quite a few fruits and vegetables where they're able to infuse it. And I really want to make sure that this is clear because this is part of education. It's all natural. So it's not what are they doing to it? It's non-GMO. There's no, they're not changing anything of the actual DNA of our plants. They're simply making it healthier. And this gut medicine, this is vital to how we go forward as being our best selves and living longer and healthier lives. So,
I love that. Once again, they are Wonder Veggies, wonderveggies.co. Listen, we're going to have you back to talk about more startups in Israel and just the exciting landscape and the scenario that's unfolding as the months unfold, really, post
mhm.
October 7th. But before we sort of push off, because I know you've got an awful lot on the stove, you have a feast coming up for this Shabbat. You're also working on your own startup, and I'd love to hear a little bit
So
about that.
Yeah, so I haven't really talked about this because it's in what we call stealth mode, which is kind of keeping it under the radar. But I felt that it was important that, as an example of what's going on, even though I'm down and out because I don't have a job, I feel that I've been given a really beautiful opportunity to say, I have unemployment and I have an opportunity here, and I can go now or never.
Mhm.
And so I fell in love with the technology at the Hebrew University, which is a compressed salt brick that would be used in construction. So, where you're sitting right now, in your house, in buildings. And the goal is it's two birds with one stone. One bird is people don't know that there's tons of sodium piling up all over the world as they're mining for potash, lithium, oil, or desalination, taking out salt from the water in order to use fresh water for us as we're consuming more and more water. And they dump it in these salt piles, these mountains. In Israel alone, because of the Dead Sea, we have 20 million tons a year of salt being piled up. And it's really bad for the soil and the water underneath it. It seeps into the soil, it's hazardous, and it's toxic to the water that we are going to drink. So you have that problem. That's one stone. And the other stone is cement. Cement is the second largest carbon emitter in the world. Okay. So we don't realize that. We think it's our cars and our transportation. Buildings. Okay. Cement is using high levels of high temperatures in order to make cement. And guess what? Cement is dirt cheap, right? That's what we call it. So it's used all over the world. So what we would like to do is kill two birds with one stone, and that stone would be a compressed salt brick. And the researcher behind this, Professor Danny Mandler, he saw the problem here in Israel where they really didn't know what to do with the salt. They were having crazy ideas. We're going to build pipelines and move. You can't do that. And he asked, hey, could you guys hand me over some salt? I want to play with this in my lab. Can I make this into a brick? And the answer is, with a proof of concept, yes, you can. You can turn it into a brick, and it's 5 times stronger than cement. It's circular economy. It's all natural. So what does it mean? You build the house. Eventually, you get bored of your house or you want something new, break it down, use the salt again. So that's all really exciting. And this is something that I felt passionately about, and I didn't want it to get stuck in the university, where a lot of innovation goes into what's called the valley of death, where it just doesn't get the funding and it dies.
And so where is this now?
So where is this now? Well, I have one in my pocket in every jacket that I own in case I ever want to talk to someone about my salt bricks. And it's at a founding stage. We're looking to found this company in the hardest of times. If you know the VC Our Crowd, so the CEO, John Medved, he
We've
gave a
had him here
global,
on the program.
oh, he's amazing. So he
Yes, would
gave
you
a
say
global,
hello next time?
yeah. So he said, if you're crazy enough to start, a company now in the most difficult of times, and you keep going and you get funding, you thrive. You don't just survive, you will thrive. So I guess I'm crazy enough to think, and I do believe that this is so important to the world. It
I want to,
has to.
yeah, I want to ask you something technical. Um, Salt, if you put water on salt,
Yeah,
then it's going to melt. So I'm
I
guessing this is
know.
treated. Can you explain that?
Right. So that's the first question that everybody asks. And it's
Well,
true.
and
Thousands.
may I interrupt my question and your answer with a little story? Because years ago I was visiting Bolivia, and so I went to the salt flats there, the Salad, and I stayed at the Salt Hotel. There's a hotel made of salt.
Yes.
And so I got there and I got in my room and it was really, really cold. And I thought, I'm going to turn on the shower and I'm just going to heat up the room and steam up the room. Well, as soon as I turned on the shower and the steam was going all over the place, I noticed that the salt was just dripping,
Right.
from the ceiling. And I thought to myself, holy smokes, I hope that these salt bricks don't, fall on me while I'm sleeping because that's going to be the end of me. And that
Right.
was my experience with a salt structure.
So the reason that Professor Mandler thought about this was exactly because of Bolivia and also places in Egypt where they used to build these salt houses. And it's true, when it rained, They were gone. Okay, it was thousands of years ago, so we hope the technology has gotten better. What the
Well, let me
professors
just say, it didn't get much better in the hotel I was staying in.
So Israel is the startup nation, beat them to it. And what he has done and patented, this is very important. It is patented. It's 95% sodium and it's 5% additives. That's the secret sauce, if you will. And yes, that makes it completely hydrophobic. So our salt bricks can definitely be dumped into water and they're not going to fall apart like you're saying. The goal here is to take them out of the university where there was a proof of concept, but it was more like, a kind of Lego size brick, a 2-inch brick. Well, you need to build it out to a full size brick, and you can't do that in the university. So, as we found this company, what we're trying to do is get the pilot off the ground that would give us the opportunity to do more research and development, to scale it up, to get it to regulatory international standards, and then, yes, to work on partnering with desalination companies, with oil companies, and with companies that are, as I said, mining. It could be, we've had conversations with places in Argentina. They're mining for lithium in a remote area. And actually, what they would love to do is take these bricks, take the salt and turn them into bricks and build the homes for the people that live there. So, and by the way, why salt is phenomenal, right? So, also in Poland, they had the salt mines that they turned into the spas. It's great for your breathing. It's antibacterial. It's anti-pest. It's non-flammable. It has so many healthy components, unlike cement, which is really bad for you and the earth.
And then I'm just curious, what's that 5% additive that makes
Oh,
it,
honey, I told you. No, I can't. I cannot reveal the patent.
but is it
Uh,
natural?
yes, it's natural. It's
Okay,
natural and it's cheap. Okay, so that's really important to know
got it.
because
That's all we need to
we
know.
wanna, yeah, that's all you need to know.
All right. Listen, now before we really, really wrap, you invoked your husband being an archaeologist at the top of the conversation. And in a sentence or two, can you just share what's his area of expertise?
Oh, wow. He is an expert of all things old and ancient, including myself at this point. He works in Jerusalem. And so there's a law here in Israel that before you build anything, you have to have an archaeologist on site. So he was working with the Antiques Authority and he could really find anything. I always considered it dirty or, trash, but he would tell me that it's actually a Byzantine period or whatever it is. And so his expertise is really in things that are from first temple period, second temple period, and right now his focus was on the sifting project, which was from the Temple Mount. They dumped out the walk, which is the security from Jordan, where the Dome of the Rock is on the other side of the Western Wall. They threw out what they considered to be trash, and any proof of maybe Jews being there with the temple,
You mean
and
the
they threw it in.
Jordanians did that?
Yeah, yeah, and these piles were just sitting there, and these really cool archaeologists kinda stole all that in trucks, and they loaded them up, and they use them they sift. They sift near the Hebrew University, and it's a volunteer project, so they have these archaeologists on site, and unfortunately, right now, with the war, it's been put on pause because we don't have enough tourists. We depend on tourists that come over there, families, bar mitzvah trips, whatever it is, birthright groups, and they would sift through the stuff. And you might find a Coke bottle from the 1960s, or you might be lucky enough to find a tooth from the first temple period. And so my husband is an expert in both of those. And so it's a lot of fun. And he is like the Indiana Jones.
I got to
Is
try
his
that. I want to join him when
Yeah, yeah.
when that resumes. I'd love to do that because that's kind of my beat. It's something I personally would enjoy.
That's good.
Anyway,
I'm not
but
interested.
well, I you're not interested.
I like the future. He likes the past. We're yin
Oh,
and yang. It works and it
listen.
doesn't.
I was going to say, listen, it's working for you. But I have to
Yeah.
say, this has been such a fantastic conversation. We just truly want to thank you so much, Molly, for joining us on this episode of IsraelCast. And we do want to have you back because we want to talk about more startups and we want to hear how you're progressing with your SALT project. So, really wishing you lots of success with that.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
very much.
much.
I appreciate it. Thank
All
you for
right.
having me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we'll have info about Molly and all of the terrific companies that she spoke about on the show notes page of our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And we do indeed release new episodes of the show every other Wednesday. And we do have a few bonus episodes too up our sleeve. So look out for them as well. And just so you never miss an episode of our show. I don't know why you would want to do that. Do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. Simply search for IsraelCast. And of course, don't forget to rate and review us because that really helps with our rankings, which in turn make it easier for more folks around the world to find us. Or you can always enjoy the show by visiting us at our website. Once again, after all these years, hope you got it. As I said at the top of the show, it's jnf.org/IsraelCast. Now, it takes a whole moshav indeed to put IsraelCast together. For that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, J.D. Krebs, and Ellie Kadrin. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from Mirror Tone Studios, right here in the very heart of New York City, just across town. And the music that you hear at the top until the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzaddik label. IsraelCast is powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. For more info about JNF USA, do visit jnf.org. And if you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, I know Molly would love to hear from you, and so would I. So do email us at israelcast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Steven Shalowitz. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.